Welcome to the Foul Play YouTube channel.
Hey, welcome everyone. Welcome to Coffee with Foul Play, our podcast entitled Justice Denied Part 3. And my name is Dr. Silkman. Welcome everyone. Welcome to the podcast. It's great to be back. It's great to be doing another podcast for you guys. I'd just like to let everyone know that we have reached 624 subscribers, and all of us from the panel and from the Foul Play team would like to thank all of our subscribers. We really appreciate your subscriptions. We really also enjoy your feedback and your questions. We try and answer your questions as early as possible, and we really love your feedback. And so far on the Foul Play channel, our videos have attracted over 111,000 views, and we really appreciate that. That's really awesome. Now, today, our regular researchers who are on the podcast today are BB, Big Jeff, Kelly85, Christy, Millbilly, Zoe, and manning the chat, checking over the chat on YouTube, we have Sammy. And I'd like to welcome our guest researcher for today, Miss Piggy. And welcome, guys. Welcome so much. And we're so happy that you guys are joining us. If you like what we do, please hit the subscribe button. Thank you. Well, before we start the podcast proper, there's a couple of announcements. Bibi, would you like to mention something about the Pfeifer funeral home? Thank you, Bibi.
Yes. I have heard a complaint on Twitter that people are propagating an incorrect statement, and we are guilty of doing the same thing, partially
Yes.
out of laziness. I knew this at the time. But we have said that Bushman's wife owns the funeral home. And in actuality, it is his wife's family. I think it's her great uncle and a second cousin.
Yes.
So it is her family, her extended family. And I'm not sure if I said this on a coffee live one or a TTT, and I'll make the same announcement there as well.
Yes.
But yes, so part of it's out of laziness because I did know it was her family.
Right. Yeah.
Yes, but I just wanted to clear that up because I'm more than happy if I realize that we've made a mistake to
Yeah.
say that we have. We're not perfect, we're people.
Yes.
Yes. So that's all I really wanted to say about that. So
All right.
wherever we said her family, his wife or him, insert the word her family.
Yes. Yep. Thank you, Bibi.
Yep.
And just to echo what Bibi said, look, we're not perfect. We do sometimes make errors, and it's great that our listening audience can spot where we have erred, and we try and correct that as soon as we possibly can for the sake of being accurate. Thank you very
Which
much.
the comment wasn't even directed at us. It was directed at
Right.
somebody else who has also
Yes.
done this. But I just felt it was the right thing to do to say something about it and clear it up.
Yep. Fantastic, Bibi. Thank you so much. And also, if you follow our TTTTs, we had a couple during this week about stooges of the state. And Big Jeff recently did one about the Evers decision or non-decision. Big Jeff, would you like to spend a couple of minutes retelling some of the major points about the Evers non-decision? Big Jeff.
I'd be happy to do that, Dr. Silkman. I think everybody is probably aware right now that the parole board for the state of Wisconsin sent a letter to Brendan Dassey and Laura Nyrider indicating that Brendan was not eligible for consideration for his plea. for clemency, with the primary reason being that he had not completed his sentence, and in addition to completing his sentence, another 5 years had not elapsed.
Yeah,
So
I had to double read that to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. So in essence, Big Jeff, he has to wait to 2048 plus 5 more years and then apply.
yeah. I don't know whether there's term limits in Wisconsin, but with any luck, we'll be done with Governor Evers. Can you imagine that the great humanitarian
Yes.
who chided the previous governor of Wisconsin, Scott Walker, for not using
Yes.
the power of pardon, is now using it, but only for people who have been out of jail for 5 years.
Yes,
and haven't
I know. It really is a tragedy, and you know, I ask all of our podcast listeners to definitely have a listen to that TTT. It's emotional, it's raw, it's brilliant, and you know, Big Jeff. The other major point I think was that he had to register as a sex offender as well. Is that correct, Big Jeff?
That's what the parole board said. It didn't, and the word. I mean, the quality control is unbelievable.
Yes.
If the reason should have been that he had not registered as a sex offender. The way the letter is written, it's almost chiding him for not registering as a sex offender.
Yes. Yes.
But it's you think you'd get a little bit better quality control than that, and from the state of Wisconsin.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
But you know, another last part, in my opinion, of that cowardly act is, you know, releasing it. You know, every time a politician has something that they want released that they're hoping will go away quickly, they do it on a Friday before a holiday weekend, right? What better Friday? But before Christmas, right? Where there's a long, you know, Christmas week, most people have it off, aren't paying attention to the news,
and then forget about it.
And he had his toadies come out and do it, right? Call.
Correct.
Just he wouldn't make a way in, and that's just a coward. I'll reserve any further comment. But with regard to our Thirsty Thursday, looking forward to it this week. We're going to do part 2 of Stewage for the State, where we're going to get into the antics, into the technical aspects of the antics of Culhane. We kind of last week was much more of a setup video.
Question.
A question.
Does he have to register while he's still incarcerated? That seems odd.
What are they going to do? Put him in jail if he does?
I don't think he's able to. I don't believe that he's able to, but I believe that it is a condition that once he gets out of whatever, that he would have to register. You know, that he is sentenced to, you know, this sexual natured crime, and he's going to have to register when he gets out.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a way to him previously to do it while he's in, if that helps.
Thank you.
I'm not a lawyer, nor do I play one on YouTube, but that's the best of my understanding of it.
From what Big Jeff posted, it seems that's one of the conditions. He has to wait 5 years after being released, and he has to be a registered sex offender before he can ask for a pardon.
Well, he has to not be a registered. He has to not be a registered sex. They can't have a sex offense crime.
Right.
Oh, right. Okay.
Because he has to register, he's not eligible for this pardon.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Because right away when they asked for clemency, I looked up what the difference between clemency and a pardon was, and it's almost the same thing. There was a little bit different in wording, so I don't know what difference that makes. And we don't even have clemency in our state. We only had the pardon. And then I looked at the pardon conditions, and I knew that he shouldn't even consider. He should have said, he knows this case. I'm sure he does.
Yeah.
He should have said, there's no way possible we can consider him for our pardons because he doesn't meet our criteria. You know, so this was all just them blowing smoke.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
If I could have one more.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
So one thing we did to try and raise awareness was we recycled our Three Stooges picture with Sherry. We put Evers on there.
Yeah, oh,
if
it's brilliant.
politicians hate one thing, they hate to be humiliated. Please get
Yes.
on Twitter. Please retweet. We're just trying to get that picture out there, hoping that governor ever sees it. People are laughing at you for your cowardly acts, right? You're a coward. We know it. You're a stooge. Let them know. Please retweet it as much as you can. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Big Jeff. Yeah, look, I listened to the TTT. It was brilliant. I had tears. It really was very raw, very emotional. And of course, on our podcast, we also cover the Brendan Dassey case. Don't worry, there'll be a lot of slides coming up with Brendan in it, and we'll be discussing that case as well. Yes, so please, guys, if you haven't listened to it, listen to the latest TTT. It's all about the Evers non-decision. Also on our panel, we have Christy, who's done an incredible, sterling job regarding the phone calls. Christy, would you like to spend a couple of minutes on the phone calls, what you have found so far, just briefly, Christy?
Sure. Let's see. There's just been a couple things lining up. You can see some of Ken Kratz's actions to keep Stephen behind bars when
Yes.
Stephen was about to get out on bond. You can see some of the actions and some of the things Ken Kratz was doing in the background to try to stop that from happening.
Yeah.
And it's really my belief at this point that when they went after Brendan on February 27th, it was a Monday, and it was because on Friday, Dean Strang had just submitted the paperwork for Stephen to get out on a property bond. And I believe that when they got word of that Monday morning is when they decided that they had to do something. And that's when Brendan comes into the picture.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jody's where I'm at in the calls right now. Jody is out of prison and they spend a lot of time talking. So March is tough to get through. It's tough to get through just because Jody and Stephen talk a lot of nonsense and because it does get a little emotional. It's like you just said about the live podcast from yesterday. It's raw.
Oh God. Yes.
We also hear Stephen talking to Laura Riccardi from Making a Murderer. There's a couple calls with her where you hear those clips on Making a Murderer. So it's just very interesting to listen to it all as it's happening and how it went down and just the way certain members in the family acted. And you also hear in detail while he's on the phone with Jody, when Jody's finding things in the trailer, things that were broken, things that are missing, just the complete lack of respect law enforcement had for this family. And you can just see that they really did everything they could to try to destroy this family. They wanted Stephen at all costs and they didn't care who they ran over in the process.
Yes. And of course, thank you very much, Christy. And we can see that in some of the images on MAM 1, whereby a camera crew is obviously following Jody going back into the trailer. And it's like a tornado has gone through that whole place. They've completely ripped the place apart. You know that they basically dismantled his bedroom and took wood paneling, carpeting, a whole variety of objects from the bedroom and just left the mess as it was. And, if you've ever had the unfortunate of being robbed, someone's coming into your house and ransacking your home, that's exactly how it looked like. It really was a very humiliating experience for the family. And I've only listened to a few of the calls myself. They are very hard to get through, I must admit, because you're listening into a family under crisis. And just a few things which I've learned from the calls. The family is at war with itself. There's a lot of tension, especially between the brothers and also with the sister as well. There's a lot of issues happening with the mother and the father. Christy, do you have any other further comments about that? Just your overall sense of how the family is coping with what's happening with Stephen.
You say that it was a family at war with themselves.
Yes.
It's a war that law enforcement caused. It's a war
Yes.
that law enforcement orchestrated.
Yes.
It's a war that law enforcement had to go back to the drawing board when they realized how the one thing about the Averys, their bond is kind of tight. I kind of have a deep
Yes.
respect for the bond and the love that this family has. Is twisted and toxic and strange as it is, they love each
Yes.
other. They love each
Yeah.
other.
Yes.
When Brendan and I'm sorry, when Stephen and Barbara are talking on the phone after Brendan's been arrested, when
Yeah.
Stephen tells his sister, "I love you," you know it's real. You can feel that it's real. "I love
Yes.
you. I would never do anything to hurt you." You
Yes.
can just feel it. And I said this before too, Carla and Stacy. I love how happy Stephen gets when he gets on the phone with either Carla or Stacy.
Yeah.
It seems to lift his spirits up, and I like that about that.
And
Um,
who is Stacy?
Big J.
Stacy is Carla is Stephen's niece, Chuck's daughter, and Stacy is in real time 2019. Stacy is Carla's husband. At this point in 2005 and 2006, he is just her fiance. They're not married
Right.
yet.
Right.
So
Right.
the family bond is definitely something I wanted to point out, and that's definitely something they have. And the love between the mother and the son is amazing.
Yes. Yes. That's what actually shines through for me. The endless devotion that Dolores has for Stephen. And it just really makes the whole ludicrous situation of Stephen allegedly murdering Teresa Hallbach, knowing full well what's going to happen to the family. And you can see the bond and the love between mother and son. And it really is a human tragedy. And Christy, just quickly, what phone, how many calls have now been uploaded to our channel?
850. I believe
850 calls, right.
that we have discovered a handful, like 8 to 10 of them aren't Stevens. I believe the final count on Steven is 842,
Right.
and I am on 689.
Oh, my Lord. All right, Christy, thank you
We
so
have
much for
another
that.
question.
There's
Yes,
also supposed to be more calls coming too.
more calls coming. Okay.
Yes.
Sammy.
Julie Thornton asks, there may still be something Nyrider can do. Maybe Governor Evers is waiting to see what happens with Stephen's case.
That's a
Not
possibility.
sure.
That is a possibility. You never know.
Well,
I mean,
I,
Millbilly.
I believe the fact that Brendan didn't meet any criteria whatsoever, that Evers never even got to see it, because there's a board in place to review everything before they send it to him.
Right. Just a quick question. Is this the end of the line for Brendan? Is there any hope, Big Jeff?
It was truly the end of the
Oh, sorry,
line for him before this.
Right.
It really was. He has no more legal recourse. This was like a Hail Mary,
Right.
shot.
So,
Yeah. Big
I
Jeff.
mean, I'd love to have a lawyer's opinion, but I thought that he was still eligible to file a motion for post-conviction relief. His previous traverse through the courts was addressing the viability of his confession.
Yes.
And it was not a motion for post-conviction relief per se. But if you think about what Zellner's doing, for example, she
Yes.
is, she's trying to build evidence, right? She is just discovering new evidence. She's a day planner, the RAV expert,
Correct.
various aspects of physical experts.
Yes.
Brendan doesn't have any physical evidence against him.
No, he doesn't.
It's
He
only
doesn't.
so that's yeah. So it's going to be difficult for him to file a motion for post-conviction relief based upon a discovery of new evidence because he doesn't have any evidence convicting him. However, it is true that he is always eligible, I think, and certainly he would be the state that I'm from, for executive clemency, which would be clemency from the government.
The only thing that can help Brendan is new evidence.
Yeah. Now, Millbilly, with the new evidence, we're talking about finding the real in quotes, killer.
Yes. Or
Yeah,
finding proof that that it's just there's not a single piece of evidence that links Brendan to any of this whatsoever.
correct. Correct. In fact, you can't actually physically link Brendan to Teresa Horbach on the 31st of October 2005. You can't put them together. So you've got this horrible situation whereby he's falsely confessed, he was coerced, and it seems like nothing can be done, which is extremely, very, very frustrating. This reminds me very much. Sorry, Kelly85. Yes, do you have a comment?
I was just gonna say, don't you find it like a bit more a kick in the teeth that even though they released it saying that Governor Evers isn't going to consider it, it's denied, he didn't even sign it. It was an
No.
unsigned document. So it's like that's how much we care. We're not going to even sign it. Or, but a lot of people I'm reading on Twitter and stuff are saying, is that also an open, like an open suggestion that maybe he sign it because it could lead to maybe an overturning of because it hasn't been. That's
I think, thank you, Kelly. I think what Millbilly said is correct. It's filtered. Evers probably never got to see it. Big Jeff.
I know I disagree with Millbilly at my own peril because he's usually always right. But my opinion is he didn't sign it because he's a coward. It's impossible that he didn't know about this. What he wants is plausible denial. It's hard to believe
Yeah,
that none of his staff actually told him about this. So we can argue
yeah,
that he didn't see it, but that's part of the cowardliness of this decision.
sure. I agree, guys. And look, we we could spend at least another 2 hours just talking about that. But we better move on onto the podcast. Emil Billy, do you have any comments about your interviews that you've done with Paul? A couple of quick comments.
Uh, uh, I've enjoyed them. He's open to talk about anything,
Yes.
and it just pretty much flows.
Fantastic. So, guys, Millbilly has done a series of interviews with Paul Capaldi, and if you're interested, please go and listen to them. They're really, really excellent. All right, well, guys, we better make a start on our podcast proper. And last time we finished on slide 160, and we don't really need to spend too much time on that. Slide 160 looks at the bones that were allegedly found in Stephen Avery's burn pit. And the way we left that slide was the very unprofessional, uncaring nature in which the burn pit was addressed, the way they used heavy machinery to dig out the bones, allegedly bones, because we don't have any in situ photographs showing the finding of the human cremains. We know that the coroner was not permitted to come onto the Avery salvage yard. And we also know that Eisenberg was only given a box of bones. So she physically was not on the Avery salvage yard. So she's reliant on the fact that, hey, these bones were found in this location. Tell us what you know about them. We also finally compared the cremains to the cremains that you find from a crematorium, a human body that's been burnt in a crematorium. And we noted that the bones look very, very similar. The important point about that, guys, is that in order to get bones to this particular state, small fragments, heavily burnt, is that the bones have to be exposed to extremely high temperatures, around 1800 to 2000 degrees Fahrenheit, for at least 2 hours. And we know that there's no way that Stephen Avery's open burn pit would be able to reach those types of crematorium type temperatures. It just simply cannot be done. So there's something really fishy going on here, guys. All right, so we've discussed the bones a lot, and I'm sure we will be revisiting them at some stage in the future. So guys, let's now turn to our one of our favorite subjects, the RAV4. So let's have a look at slide 161. Now, anyone on the panel would like to make a comment on what they see here? This is the RAV4 in the State Crime Lab. Does anyone want to make any comment about these pictures? Who would like to make a comment? Millbilly, do you have any comments about that RAV?
No, I just find it strange that they seem to focus more on the tech than they are the car in majority of the photos.
Yes. Yes. Now, remember, the actual RAV4 itself was found by Pam of God and her daughter on the 5th of November. It was then transported. Millbilly, you want to talk a little bit more about the... Oh, Sammy, do we have a question?
Wait a minute. That looks like a 4-door to me.
Yes.
It is a
It is a 4-door.
Who made that comment? Is Pam Sturm in the audience today?
Yes. We all know. Bibi, do you have a comment?
No.
All good. Millbilly, do you want to continue your comments about the RAV4?
Well, every location we have pictures of it doesn't ever look like the same vehicle.
Yes. We've discussed the possibility of multiple RAV4s here, but in particular, what we're trying to discuss is the RAV4 that's apparently in the State Crime Lab. Big Jeff, do you have any comments?
Yeah, it's a good thing that the podcast, it does have a definitive stopping time, because we could just go on about this, couldn't we?
Yes, we could.
With the RAV, it's some of the most suspicious aspects of it are not necessarily what you see in the pictures, but what you don't see. We have thousands of pictures of the tech. We have pictures of the concrete. Not one picture of the VIN. Well, one, but it's blurred.
Correct.
And how's that possible? Also, it's very difficult. I think we have one picture in total of all the pictures that were taken of the rear passenger's quarter of the RAV. Why?
Yes.
How come?
That's a very, very good question. I'm not 100% sure. Millbilly, do you have any further comments? Thank you, Big Jeff. All right. So what we see here in slide 161 are some photographs of the RAV4. It's pretty obvious that the car itself, the vehicle itself, is blue in color. Right? Now, we also know, I hope we can agree on that it is indeed blue in color. And when Pam of God and her daughter found the RAV4 on the Avery salvage yard, you can clearly see that Pam of God, Pam Sturm, was very concerned by the color of the vehicle, because on all the missing posters, it all said dark green. Millbilly, do you have any comments?
Well, as to the blood that's on the vehicle.
Yes.
We got the blood that's on the panels. Like, okay, why do they choose to leave the panels intact with this biological material on it? Why don't they remove the panels and preserve them? They don't. They choose to leave them in the vehicle the whole time. But when it comes to the Suzuki that's sitting in his garage, they choose to remove the whole door from the damn car, but there's not a speck of evidence on that whatsoever. So why are they removing things from some things to preserve it, but things they should be removing, they don't?
Yeah. And of course, that's a very, very good point, Millbilly. Big Jeff, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I would just to amplify what Millbilly said. What about A23, sample A23? On the rear door of the RAV4, biological evidence that clearly should be preserved. the lack of curiosity is stunning. Right? We talk about, we're going to hear more about that on Thursday's podcast if you're interested.
Yes, yes. Well, look, Miss Piggy, do you have a comment?
Hi everyone. Just to say that you're questioning why they didn't test this or whatever, but at the end of the day, when that RAV4 was found on Avery salvage yard, apparently, why did they not try and open it before moving it and waiting days to try and find out where Teresa was? This is the big question I have. If there's a missing person, you're going to do everything you can to try and find her. So they should have opened that car there and then.
They already had a plan. They already had a plan in place.
I agree with her. I agree with her because what if you are looking for a missing person. What if she's still alive? Yeah.
Yeah.
And we hear Earl say, okay, we got them Uyghur requesting they bring the storage container to remove the RAV from the property. But we hear Earl say that Paul Rabas removed the car with the brand new wrecker they just got.
Right.
It makes me wonder why they intentionally made that guy get lost.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. It's almost like they didn't want him to pick up the vehicle, right?
Precisely.
Big Jeff. Yes. Yes. Miss Piggy.
I just wanted to clarify. If Mila Bibley could clarify, the guy that got lost is a little bit might be a little bit out of context for some of the listeners. If you could clarify that a little bit.
On who Rabas was?
Okay. Not Paul Rabas. I can't remember the guy's exact name that is contacted from Calumet County to go to the Avery's property. He owns storage containers, and the dispatcher tells him, okay, we need you to go to 147 and Q, tells him how to get there, instructs him when he gets off the freeway, get off on Highway 147 and go east. When you get to Q, that's where the checkpoint's going to be. When you get to the checkpoint, notify the officer at the checkpoint that you're looking for Mark Uyghur. Well, when he gets to the checkpoint, they advise him, instead of going through the checkpoint, to head down Q. Well, he somehow gets lost, ends up calling Calumet County Dispatch, doesn't know where the hell he is. The dispatcher finally helps him, and he ends up all the way in Two Rivers by the Fox Hills Resort.
Right.
He eventually finds his way back up to 147 and comes in by Jambo Creek.
Yes.
So they basically detoured him. He got lost, and they never used him whatsoever.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like a decoy, which is really, really crazy. But just to thank you, Milbilly, but just to echo what Miss Piggy said, it really makes no sense. When you think about it, the Toyota RAV4 is the crime scene. And one wonders why they waited several hours before processing the vehicle. We know that there are no in situ photographs taken of inside the Toyota RAV4 while it was at the Avery salvage yard. And it's really bizarre that the investigators waited until nightfall, really, before the wrecker crew was called in, before the Toyota RAV4 was removed from the property and placed on a loader. Big Jeff.
I know we've said it in previous podcasts, but the context is here again. Not only did they not look in the car, but somehow they also managed to tell the family that there was no immediate view of.
Okay, to address Jamie Van Hoot's comment,
Yes,
Scott Towing did pick up the RAV, but they towed the RAV from the Wisconsin State Crime Lab back to Calumet.
Right.
Paul Rabas is the Maryville fire chief. He's on the property as the fire chief. He then leaves, returns as Rabas Towing, the tow truck driver. He's the one that removes the car from the property and takes it to Madison.
Yes.
Not Scotch. Scotch is the towing company that takes it, because Scotch is based out of Madison. They towed it from the crime lab in Madison back to Calumet.
Right. Right. Miss Piggy. do you have a comment?
I'm just confused as well that when the RAV4 was found by Pam of God at 10:30 in the morning, that Jason Orff stated in the court that he didn't start logging anything about people entering or leaving the property until 2:45 that
Correct.
afternoon. So
Correct.
that to me is ridiculous as well.
Yes, it is. Sammy, do you have a question?
Has anybody made a connection between the Rab and Cuss? They put everything off in order to do things under cover of dark.
Well, we and Millbill, you'll probably echo this. Remember that Steve Avery was interrogated on November the 9th, and Fassbender and Wiegert informed Stephen Avery that they knew how the RAV4 got on the premises and where it was placed at the pit. And clearly it had come from the Deer Camp Cuss Road. Millbilly, do you have any comments about that? So you're right. It was all done under the cover of darkness. You're correct. Millbilly.
Well, it's just like they're definitely hiding something. There's not a single report of something that happens on Cuss Road. You got Wiegert and Fassbender both telling them that the dogs took us to her body. We know how the car got there. It went through your field, by the cul-de-sac, through the deer camp, in through the back pit.
Yes.
And now we got Kratz' book. Why is he talking about bones being found near Cuss Road? There's
Yes.
no documentation of bones being found anywhere near Cuss Road.
No. It's all been suppressed. Thank you, Millbilly. Big Jeff, do you have a comment?
Right. Only that it's not Wiegert and Fassbender not only tell that to Stephen in his the November 9th interview, but Kathleen Zellner has an affidavit from Joshua John that said the police told him and the FBI told him that they told him the same thing. So it's not just Stephen. It's not just something they told one person. And Kathleen Zellner has put that in her motion for post-conviction relief.
Yes, she has.
Where's that evidence? Where's that
She
evidence?
has.
That's a Brady violation.
Yeah, yes, she has. And that's remarkable that both Fassbender and Wiegert were telling Stephen an important piece of information where they believe the RAV4 had come from. And as we know, when Brendan was interrogated, Brendan said a completely different story of how the RAV4 got to the pit. He told the investigators that both him and Stephen drove the RAV4 past his parents' house, past Chucky's house, past Dolores's home, and no one saw a thing. So the route taken by Brendan is in complete contrast to what Fassbender and Wiegert told Stephen on November the 9th. Now remember, on November the 9th, Fassbender and Wiegert knew nothing about Brendan Dassey. So suddenly you have this conflict in how the RAV4 got to the pit. And it's interesting that both Fassbender and Wiegert were alluding to the fact that, hey, we know where the RAV4 came from. It came from Cuss Road, Deer Camp, the back entrance way. And Big Jeff, you're correct. This has been highlighted in one of the reports done by Kathleen Zellner. So someone has got to be right, someone has got to be wrong. So you've got these two contrasting stories of how that RAV4 got there. So, Millbilly, do you have any comments?
Well, she's also trying to determine how the damage got put on the car.
Yes, correct.
And like I said, I don't believe that's her car at all.
You mean the one that's in the crime lab?
Yeah,
Or the one that was found in the
one that's
salvage
found
yard?
on Avery's salvage. It's not hers.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
too many discrepancies. The fact that we only have one evidence tag that has the VIN listed on it. Otherwise,
Yes.
all the other evidence tags, it's listing a Sam William Harry 582. There's not even a plate on the car.
Correct.
So why are they
Correct.
listing the plate number?
Correct. Miss Piggy, do you have a comment?
Yeah, and the VIN number was tampered with as well.
That is correct. Yes, we do hear the word tampering a lot. But just one point. In the new batch of photographs that have been released, and Millbilly has done several excellent YouTube video clips on this. There's a picture that shows the hood of the RAV4 opened up, and under the hood you can see a sticker. Now, I was able to blow up that sticker using a Photoshop, and it is the same VIN number listed to Teresa Hallbach. That's the same VIN number. Sammy, do you have a question?
Be Happy says 2 things about the RAV that got me was the person seeing the RAV alerting Colburn at the convenience mart after seeing the missing picture, and the
Yes,
other is the battery switch.
correct. Millbilly, do you have any comments about the fact that the RAV4 doesn't have the original battery? Millbilly.
Yeah, that's huge too.
What about the battery it does have?
Why are there panels missing? The center console cover is gone. The rear covers that went in the back are gone. Like,
Yeah.
but why is the carpet untucked on the right side? That doesn't happen naturally.
No. Yes. If you have a look at the Toyota RAV4, this is the crime scene. If you're going to tamper or plant, what you simply do is you can transpose panels from one vehicle to another. Millbilly, is it actually possible to get a new sticker, a VIN sticker?
Yes, the only thing you can't duplicate is the VIN that's stamped in the firewall.
Right. And
You can get
correct me if I'm wrong.
replacement VIN plates. You can get replacement stickers.
Yeah. Do we actually have any photographs of the firewall?
Yes.
Right. And does that number correspond with the VIN?
We don't really see well, that VIN coincides with the VIN. Like, why do they make the clerical mistake they claim and write 98 instead of 99? And Fassbender does that.
Yeah. Now I know for a fact that some vehicles can be built in 98, but they can be sold in 99. So it depends on what's been stamped.
Oh yeah, well,
on
if
the
you
chassis.
have a 98 vehicle, it would have to be built in 97.
Yeah. Yes, but do we have any photographs that correspond with the firewall VIN with the VIN on the sticker?
Or the dash? No.
We don't. Okay.
No.
Okay. That's interesting. Big Jeff.
We do. There is one picture where you can see the last 6, which do correspond to Teresa's. But in that same picture, you do not have a good view of the outside of the car.
But if she gets the car, all she has to do is get the car. There's multiple different places you can verify that VIN. And it's stamped in the inner fender well. It's all over the place. And if you pull up the carpet, it's also stamped underneath the passenger seat, underneath the carpet.
Right
where the jack goes.
But my point is that for that picture we do have where we can see the partial on the VIN, we can't really tell what car there is. I mean, if there's 2 RAVs and there was like that second RAV reported, that was green. But if we have it, then it's not unreasonable to think that picture could be from her actual RAV, right?
No. The photo of the firewall doesn't prove it was taken in the lab, and that was a comment by Suzanne Sims.
No, it doesn't.
She said it much more clearly than
me. Yes.
I have a question for Millbilly.
Yes.
Yes, baby.
When you said inner fender well,
yes,
do you mean inside that black plastic liner that goes around the tire that's tore off for that one tire?
No,
That one?
it's
No.
stamped in the metal.
Yeah, it's actually in the metal.
Not that shroud that's missing is plastic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know,
It
but
would be
I
behind
thought
that,
maybe,
behind
yeah,
that plastic line.
behind
Behind
that.
that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So maybe
Or
they had to tear that out to switch that one, maybe?
No, because it'd be on the passenger side.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
All
All
right.
right,
So
just checking.
yeah. Thank you, Bibi. So in other words, we can't actually disprove two revs. Is that correct? We can't
I'd say
disprove
that's
it.
correct.
Yeah, we can't actually disprove that there's at least two RAV4s.
And then we also hear Queso Dispatch, Pagel stating that they're ordering storage containers for all the vehicles. So obviously they don't have one yet. So if they called that guy with the box, what happened to him? They obviously didn't use the box.
Right.
If they're getting storage containers lent to
All
them
right.
from the
Okay.
lady.
So, guys, do we have any agreement? Is Teresa's original RAV4, was it dark green or Mystic Teal Mika?
Dark forest green.
Green?
Green. Forest green.
Green? Big
Green.
Jeff?
Her mother said dark green. She's not going to get
dark
that
green. Yeah. So in other words, we have a consistency. On the missing posters, we have dark green.
Yeah.
We have the mother stating dark green. We
Even the officers, they've been hearing that they're looking for a dark green vehicle. So
Correct.
even Tyson states, "I'm stationed to guard and stand near the green vehicle."
Correct.
It doesn't
Correct.
say blue, and not to mention, there's also a tarp on it.
Correct. That is correct. So, do we have a consensus that the RAV4 found by Pam of God, the exterior shell cannot be Teresa's Toyota RAV4?
I just don't understand how Zellner can say she verified a VIN on a car she's never seen.
Right. Because to me, if you're gonna set up the crime scene, you at least want to use the internal panels of the vehicle, because the evidence that was being collected was from the inside of the Toyota RAV4, and it just so happened that the blood appears on panels, mainly panels of the RAV4. Big Jeff, do you have a comment?
I do, and I think that Zellner's playing a chess game, so you can't necessarily what she says take it at face value. She
Yes.
also made a comment a long time ago that she had sort of cleared the police of evidence planting.
Oh, yeah, when she said
Yeah.
the blood came from the sink, therefore it rules
Yeah.
out law enforcement. In my opinion,
Right, but
no, it doesn't.
that didn't stop her from accusing in her post-conviction relief briefing outright that Wiegert and Fassbender illegally switched the swabs with the hood latch swab with the groin swab that was taken
Yeah.
by Stephen
Yeah.
from Stephen on the 9th. I mean, so she doesn't absolve the police of anything.
No.
But,
No.
yeah, she's playing a game. She's playing chess with her. So
Yeah. So what I was keen for, guys, was to try and get a consensus here, because we can talk about the RAV4 for several days. My personal belief is that there are at least two RAV4s, but I believe that the RAV4 that we see here in the State Crime Lab, the internal panels are from Teresa's car, Teresa's vehicle, because we have blood allegedly belonging to the victim, Teresa Horbach, at the back. We have blood allegedly belonging to Stephen Avery at the front, right? So it looked to me, the vehicle looks like it's been ransacked. It's been gone over, and there are bolts and plastic tabs missing on the panels. So you can easily transplant panels from one vehicle onto the next. Millbilly, do you have any comment? Oh, Sammy, do we have a question?
Yeah. Were there any pics off that camera. Was that Teresa Hallback's camera? I saw an evidence log somewhere, TH pictures. Anyone know anything about those?
That's a good
Yeah,
question. I
yeah,
know.
there were
Oh,
there.
Well,
Jeff.
there's over 5,000 photos that they took, and we only have about 2,000 of them. So
Well, I
Right.
think they might be talking
that's the
about
game.
the camera card that was found in the back seat, and they did
Yes.
get pictures off of that. And by some coincidence, at least one of the pictures that Teresa had taken of one of Stephen's vehicles on the Avery salvage yard was on that. So I think the TH pictures that they
Right.
might be referring to are the pictures from that flash card that went in her camera
Yeah,
that they
the
found in the
flash
back of
card.
the RAV. Yeah,
Correct. Yes.
and some of those have been. I think those have been released, is my understanding.
Right.
I think it was supposed to be a
big
picture of a boat trailer or a
a boat.
trailer.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Correct.
that's right. That's right.
Correct. Correct. But there obviously is nothing that we know about that SD card that gives any clues as to where Teresa was.
But that
Her
SD
last
card,
photos.
the officer states that when he leaned in, he could see the SD card with her name on it.
Correct.
But
Correct.
they don't see no blood.
Yeah. 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 We can.
The pools of it. What are you talking about?
Correct. Look, there's no doubt, and we've covered this multiple times now, and this is very, very telling. All the investigators that went up to the RAV4, including Pam of God, who was a private investigator with about 9 years of experience, and her daughter, they were questioned extensively in court in the trials. None of them admitted seeing any blood. We've got Fassbender, we've got Remaker, right? And these guys had torches. They would have, they are trained to have a look over a vehicle to see if there's any form of foul play. And wasn't Michael Horbach told that there was no evidence of any foul play in the vehicle, i.e., blood? Right? So he actually made that comment, Big Jeff.
Yes, that's why I started to say that before. He said
Yes.
that interview is getting harder and harder to find on YouTube. By the way, I think
Yeah,
I think Millbilly
wonder
has
why.
it.
I wonder why. So the consent. Yeah. So Big Jeff, the consensus here, guys, is that no one spotted any form of blood, right? And Ken Kratz made the comment, as you guys have alluded to, there were pools of blood, right? But the reality was there was only 6 drops of Stephen's blood, which I worked out to be around about between 300 to 600 microliters, which means we're dealing with, guys, volumes of under
And
half a
remember,
mil.
in pretrial,
Yes.
Kratz tries to depict that A23 is in fact Stephen's blood.
Correct. But it was corrected. That mistake was corrected because I think it was Buting that actually stated that was wrong, right? Because when they questioned Colhane, she had to admit that A23 did not belong to Stephen Avery, and it couldn't have belonged to Brendan Dassey either. And we've discussed A23 before. A23 is possibly the most important piece of forensic evidence that's not been talked about. BB.
Also, there's very little of the Teresa blood in the RAV4 because it's only like 2 vials worth of blood that's in the car.
As far as the photos from in the crime lab at Calumet, at whatever in Chilton, why don't we have every angle of the car at each location?
Because Millbilly, they don't want to show you the doorknobs. They don't want to show you the doorknobs.
And the lighting they use is so poor.
Correct. And that's the way to hide things. Although, remember, if they would have taken extensive photographs, and it's quite clear that certain photographs have been withheld, right? We may never see them.
Yeah, where's
Big
all the
Jeff.
photos that Colburn took?
Yeah, love to see those. So
Yeah, look,
there's always these
big one.
moments that when you're going through the evidence here, that you say this is really what the state is expecting me to believe. Now we know that to put this second Rav to bed, myth to bed. Mike Hallback tried to go back and look for a family video that had a video of
Yes,
Teresa's car in it, so everybody could
yes,
see what color it was. Unfortunately, he was unable to produce this video. But
right. Yeah,
how many people do you know, right? Even back in 2005, the camera phones. Oh my God. How many people do you know when they bought their new car? Teresa was very proud of her new car.
yes,
How is it possible that she did not send a picture of this car to
yeah,
anybody? And
yeah.
they're expecting us to believe
Yeah,
that Teresa Hallback, a friggin' photographer, did
that's
not take a
right.
picture of this car that she was
That's
proud
right.
of and send it to
Yes,
anybody. It's
correct,
not
correct.
it's unbelievable.
Well, the
It's not
question is,
plausible that that's the case.
do we have color
Yes,
copies of the photos of
her
her with
trip
Kelly on their trip?
on the trip. Yeah, yeah. I'm sure that there are color pictures,
But
but they
why do
haven't
they
been
why do
released
they
We don't
choose
have them.
why do they choose to put the black and white ones in there? Why
because they
why is
don't want.
Wiegert falsify
Why could
information
that
on the
be?
search warrant?
Yes, yeah.
He
It's
claims
clear
that
that
Karen Hallbach called at 5 p.m. That's a complete
yes,
bullshit lie. And
yes, yes, it
and
is.
he also states that she reported the car to be dark blue.
Right, correct, correct.
She
So,
says
in other words,
RAV4. The dispatcher
yes,
says, "Did you say red Ford?" She says, "No, a RAV4,
Rav4. Yes,
dark green."
correct, correct.
Ford Toyota,
So,
a Ford Toyota,
yeah,
that famous maker.
yes. So, look, there's no doubt that initially the color that we always hear is dark green. When Pam of God suddenly finds the RAV4 on the property, it now morphs into blue. So I suppose they've got to backtrack and change all their reports to make it reflect that it is indeed dark blue, because now you've now got the crime scene, the Toyota RAV4, and it is blue in color, not dark green. So the remarkable thing, and Miss Piggy made the comment, why wasn't the vehicle broken into and processed in situ? Miss Piggy, do you have any comments about that? Do you know why?
Well,
Why would
yeah,
they do that?
because they weren't looking for Teresa Holbrook. And plus, you were saying about noticing blood inside the vehicle. There was a bloody handprint on the back of the vehicle that someone should have seen within the hours that they had no one logged in and entering or leaving Avery salvage yard. So
Well,
it's
yeah,
just all why, what if, why didn't they do that? An hour and a half from Avery salvage yard longer it took to get to the crime lab as well than what it should have taken. So
yeah,
what the hell were they doing?
yeah. No. That really is an
I
excellent
believe
point.
I believe
Milby.
they left Avery Salvage and went directly to Paul Robins's garage and turned
Oh
them.
yeah, they went somewhere.
Then they went to the crime lab.
Yeah. And
They
because we
could have
don't,
also went to Cleveland Auto Salvage because it's like right there too by Robis's, right?
No,
It's along the way.
Robis is 10 minutes from Avery's. It's on the other side
right,
of the freeway. Cleveland
right.
is the opposite direction.
Oh, okay. But Cleveland
Okay.
is en route one way to the crime lab, right?
If you take the long way and go down, take 43 down to Milwaukee and then take the 94 to Madison.
Right.
Well,
But
if there was missing time on the drive to the, if there was missing time on the drive to the crime lab, then maybe that would be something there, right? But of course, there's no
Yeah.
missing time there, right?
Well,
They showed up right on time. No?
yeah. Well, the fact there is
No,
we
it stays
can't.
an hour missing.
Yeah, that's right. We can't account for an hour. But what is very suspicious is the fact that they actually moved the crime scene. Normally, what happens when a crime takes place or a piece of evidence is found, they sequester, they take extensive photographs, and they log everything in situ, which means they don't move it. They put a tarpaulin on it. They could have easily got a tent, or they could have commandeered one of the Avery sheds. They could have simply said, right, take everything out under guard. We're putting this vehicle in. We're going to process the vehicle in situ, look for fingerprints, look for blood, look for evidence, and process it there. They didn't do that. They actually moved the crime scene, the RAV4, to another location. Well, that immediately casts doubt on what happened, right? Because you lose the chain of custody. Why would you move a RAV4, the crime scene, from one location to another?
Why don't we have photos of them removing the car from the property?
That's true. That is true. Miss Piggy, do you have a comment?
Yeah, just to add to that, you mentioned putting the tarp onto the RAV, and they actually took the tarp off when it started raining as well. But they had so
Correct.
many people going in and out from the RAV4, they weren't interested
Yes.
in even taking footprint casts
Correct.
to see who had been there, what had happened. So I agree with you.
Correct.
They should never have moved that car in the first place.
Correct. And now the reason why apparently they moved the RAV4 was because there was a big storm coming. But the problem was, and as Miss Piggy stated, it rained. It rained. You can see the pictures. It was raining on the vehicle. Now, if you've got critical fingerprints, if you've got blood on the outside of the RAV4, you're going to destroy the crime scene. You're going to contaminate the crime scene, which is a cardinal sin. And apparently it did rain. The car got wet. Sammy, do you have any a comment?
Martha is asking Millbilly, the guy, previous current law enforcement, that recently posted in Reddit about dating a woman that lived on Cuss Road. Any further word on what he said about a lover's triangle with Teresa Hallback?
Oh boy.
I know Millbilly doesn't read Reddit, so she's barking up the wrong tree there. But
Yeah, I'm not aware of that.
I am aware of that Reddit post. And
sorry, bud.
It's basically just a theory. There's no
I
substantial
kind of
proof.
heard through the grapevine something like that, but I never got any details on it or was able to verify any of it.
Right. Okay. So look, guys, this is what we have to work with, right? We have to assume that that vehicle in that crime lab was the vehicle taken from the salvage yard. We have to assume that there is blood in that Toyota RAV4. We don't know when that blood got placed there, because clearly none of the investigators, none of the observers at the salvage yard ever mentioned blood. Right? Now, I can't believe that all the hours that that car was sitting there, that no one checked the front, the back. They would have definitely checked the ignition key, because you want to see whether the keys were in the vehicle. What is consistent, guys, is that no one mentioned any signs of blood. Right? And remember, in court, Colhane said, or the blood splatter expert, one of them said that the CD cover was covered, the CD case was covered by 50% of a blood smear. Now, please, you can't miss that, because the front two windows of the vehicle are clear. So you can definitely see the dash. And Pam of God admitted she saw bottles. Well, the CD case is right next to where the water bottles are, Big Jeff.
Well,
It's
if we're going to talk about consistency for a second, at least they're consistent in the way that they handle the forensic evidence, right? So there was no little pop tents around the bones, and we
No.
get to see a picture of the famous seagull-shaped blood stain that's supposedly Stephen's blood by the ignition before being
Correct.
swabbed by Cole. Hey, we've never seen that picture of that.
Correct.
I assume we're going to get to the fact that the door was found open at the state crime lab, and we have no
Correct.
idea how it got open.
Correct. Now, one thing is that there were people that were trying to get into the RAV. Nicole Sturm used apparently her sleeve or tissues, and she tried all the doors. They were all locked, right? And so other people tried to get into the RAV4 because they were trying to move the RAV4 onto a trailer. They all stated that the RAV4 was locked. So that's why they had to apparently unbolt a drive shaft underneath the RAV4 to move it. Now, I know that Millbilly doesn't agree with that. Miss Piggy, do you have a comment?
I'm just going to address a comment that was put up on your chat there about
Yes.
someone mentioned we're just pure conspiracies with two RAVs, but at the end of the day, there's going to be speculation. There's going to be different theories from people because they won't release the RAV to
Well,
Zellner.
if anybody believes that anything is planted in this case, it all is. And it starts with the RAV.
Correct.
That was the one thing that gained them entry into that property.
There are
Correct.
lots of clues if you do your homework and you look at all the pictures that are available to us. There are discrepancies.
Yeah.
Audio, like for instance, why do we only have 79 dispatch calls for Manitowoc in the entirety? But when we go to the Queso dispatch, there's over 9,000. And that's the ones that were pertinent to the case. There's 19,027 files in all, 18 folders, 2 channels each one. It's
Yes.
crazy.
Yes.
Hey,
Perhaps this
hey,
filter could
hey.
address why. Excuse me. Perhaps this filter could address why there's a document from Manitowoc County when the RAV was inevitably taken in by Calumet County. Why is there a document from Manitowoc County that says the RAV was taken into evidence on the 3rd? Can you please address that, Mr. Gilter, for us? I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
And
Yeah.
Mr.
Yeah.
Garth the Gilter or whatever his name is, whatever, I can't quite see it from here. He also says that 2 RAVs, what the WTF, proof of any of this pure conspiracies.
That
I know,
document, Dopehead.
I know,
That
I-
document says that Manitowoc took it in on the 3rd. Dumbass.
I know that Silkwood said don't bring this up earlier, but Melville, you want to talk about that hole drilled in the handle of the RAV?
There are many discrepancies.
I don't care how the hole got there. My question is, it's definitely there when it's on Avery's auto salvage. And then we have a photo of the car in the box.
Yeah.
And it's clearly gone.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
So
look.
explain that.
Now, maybe when they called that guy to get that with the box, they sent them to the real location where her RAV was to go pick it up. I don't know, but there's too many questions and not enough answers. And
Yeah. I mean,
she gets the RAV, and it'll all be settled.
Yeah. I mean, look, I understand about the conspiracy. We're really trying to get to the bottom of the RAV situation. We're not trying to make any outlandish claims. We can only comment on what we have. And the way to clear all of this up is hand over the RAV to Kathleen Zellner and her experts. That's all that's being asked, because that will clear up many of the inconsistencies. We're not here to promote conspiracies.
No.
We are here to have an open, honest discussion and discuss the discrepancies. We welcome all comments on the channel, right?
And
Uh,
so
and
far
we're-
as the color, it's been discussed a lot in this chat.
Yes, it has.
All
Yes,
these pictures here, not one of them, and they're all different angles.
Yeah.
Not one of them looks green in any way. So I am telling you all, these paint jobs on some of these cars can be a dark red, and if you look at it at a different angle in the sun, because the metallics in it, it can look like a color of a pumpkin. I
Yes.
have a RAV, and it does that. But
Yes.
in these photos, not one time does this vehicle look at all green. And the mother, when she places her missing persons report, says dark green.
Correct. And there's also CASO reports in which individuals are saying, I'm standing in front of a dark green vehicle. So it looks like initially everyone is saying dark green, dark green. Suddenly, when Pam of God finds the RAV4, it's now blue. And now all of a sudden it morphs from dark green to blue. Now, like I said, we can talk to the cows come home about the RAV4. We don't want to promote conspiracies. We want to get down to the truth. How do you get down to the truth? Hand over the vehicle to Kathleen Zellner and her experts. They will check the RAV4 from top to bottom, including the firewall, all the VINs, right? And the broken light. And because she's got experts that do micro trace analysis, if there's paint or anything else on that blinker light, they will know how that blinker light sustained damage. That's all we're asking, right? We're not trying to promote outlandish conspiracies here. If the state has nothing to hide, if the state is 100% convinced that Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey sexually assaulted, murdered, dismembered, burnt, and spread her cremains in 3 different geolocations, if they are 100% convinced, hand over the RAV. Hand over the bones. Hand over all the evidence. You got nothing to hide. And as Kathleen Zellner warned Stephen Avery, if you're lying, I'm going to expose you. So guys, we're not promoting conspiracies. It's the state that's obfuscating the truth from being known, right? I'm sick and tired of guilters smoking a pipe, standing on their hobby horse and casting aspersions to us who do all the work and all the research and all the reading to come down to the truth. And Kathleen Zellner is doing this pro bono to find out, is Stephen Avery guilty? Is Brendan Dassey guilty or not? So
Right.
don't come
Well,
to our channel.
I'm him,
Sam,
and I welcome anyone, anything, because the only going to help show when they have a question here. This is the
correct,
information we have, and please go through it. Feel free to comb through this. We have.
correct. We're sick and tired of generic comments.
And
If you're going to make Millbilly,
I'm basing what I'm saying on what I've researched.
correct,
I started out looking to see if Stephen Avery would actually be possible to do this, and there's no way in hell.
correct.
The states happen. It's impossible. There's no forensic evidence whatsoever. What they say took place did.
Yes.
A guilter support meeting must have got out because we're being hit.
Yay!
Another one shut up.
So let's walk through the timeline a little bit, right? There's a point where Fallon is actually going to turn over the RAV to Zellner to be tested,
Yes.
right? Very shortly after that, we discover that the bones have actually been returned to the family.
Yes.
What's the next thing that happens in the sequence? Does anybody remember?
Well,
Judge Sukowitz rules, right?
Yep.
Rules, a surprise ruling, surprise to everybody. And right, that, okay, nope, sorry, denied. And that stops the RAV testing.
Yeah.
She declares the bones thing, and it goes up to the next level court. Why did that happen just on the precipice of the RAV being released? Maybe the RAV is gone.
Yeah.
Why did she do that? Why is that ruling? If the state doesn't have anything to hide, why that surprise ruling? Why at that time? That's when she just got around. It's so important for her to rule right then on the eve of the RAV being tested.
Not to mention,
you know.
that was one of Kathleen Zellner's like biggest briefs that she filed, and she abruptly just denied it. But then she gets that small brief, and she drags out as long as she can.
Yes. It's your classic obfuscation, right? And I just want to put it out there to the listeners. If Stephen and Brendan are guilty of murdering Teresa Halbach, burn in hell both of them, right? I'm not here to support a murderer.
Absolutely.
I believe everyone on this panel is of the same belief. If it is shown,
I put our Discord on there a couple of times.
yes,
Anyone who have any questions, go to that Discord.
yes,
And there is resource.
yeah. Sorry, Sammy, you're breaking up a bit. You're breaking up a bit. But yeah, look, there's no question. I think everyone on this panel is mature enough to realize that if there is 100% solid proof that Stephen or Brendan had committed this crime, burn in hell both of them. But the more I read, the more I go to the original documents, the more I look at the forensics, there is no way in hell either of them came in contact with Teresa Halbach after she left the property. There's nothing that ties them forensically to the murder. Nothing at all. And there is no forensic evidence that links Brendan to the trailer, nor the garage, nor to Teresa Halbach. There's nothing there. There is just a coerced confession.
Well, the state's timeline of what took place, it didn't. It's been debunked. Zellner's done it. We've done it. There's no.
And the evidence that you'd expect to be there, the forensic evidence, like mixtures of blood between the victim and the perpetrator, aren't there either.
Correct.
So be prepared to say, when you tell us we don't have any evidence, be prepared to discuss the evidence that we just discussed, the Manitowoc document.
I remember when they're interrogating Brendan Dassey and they ask him what happened, he claims that when they shoot her and everything, it happened outside the garage.
Correct.
And they don't like that. So they're like, no, what happened in the garage? They're deleting them the whole time.
Correct. There's no doubt they're leading Brendan into telling a story that they want to go with.
That's why if
it's
you
pretty
listen,
obvious.
If you listen to these jail calls, you get a perspective of what's happening and why it is.
Yeah. Yeah. So, in that regard, Miss Piggy, do you have a comment?
Just quickly as well, in regards to the damage to the RAV as well, no one's ever mentioned or questioned either Stephen or Brendan what happened to the RAV. What did you hear? What happened? You'd be wanting to know that because there's a missing woman.
Correct. And we know that, and we'll see pictures at the moment of the RAV4 at the back. Now, look, just a general remark.
Hold on. Excuse me 1 second.
Sorry,
Ryan, I apologize for interrupting. Ryan Hilligus claimed that, this happened a while ago, and Teresa filed a claim, and she pocketed the money instead of fixing the RAV. Right? So it had the question has been asked, and the state has provided their answer via Ryan Hilligus, their stooge. But fortunately for us, Kathleen Zellner looked into that story and called into the insurance company. And who wants to tell us what the insurance company said?
And if she drove around, with a car like that, she eventually would have got pulled over because she's missing her turn signal.
Yeah. And how embarrassing. You got a professional photographer going to car yards, taking photographs of vehicles, and she's driving around with a broken blinker light.
And remember, when
I,
they're interrogating Stephen Avery, they tried to get him to say that something happened inside the pit. Like, did she come into the pit? Did she trip, fall, hit her head?
correct. Yeah.
Did,
So, we welcome guilters. You can debate me on any of the forensic evidence you want, but make sure that you first of all do your homework, because we'll show you up what you really know. And making passive comments holds no water, because as you've noticed on our podcast, we talk about the material, we talk about the evidence, and we have all the original documents to back our statements up.
and if Stephen Avery was guilty, why would they have no problem letting her see the evidence?
Correct. If you notice,
if you want to hear a
sorry,
little bit about Dr. Silkman's pedigree, listen to our last Thirsty for Thursday, where he discusses his PhD in microbiology and the experience he has in that area. We're not talking out of our butts here, people.
no. I mean, remember when we all started this case, even I assumed that both Brendan and Stephen had committed this horrendous crime, until I learned and went back to the original documents, the original trial testimonies, and I looked at all the forensic evidence. It didn't stack up. You see error after error, inconsistency after inconsistency. And I've done 11 presentations where I look at all the forensic evidence, as other YouTubers have as well. And it seriously does not make any sense whatsoever. That's why we spend a lot of time on the RAV4, because that is the major crime scene, right? So we know that in the RAV4, apparently, there are two sets of bloods, one belonging to Teresa Horbach, the victim, one set of blood belonging to Stephen Avery. There's no mixture of blood. We also know that from a cherry Pepsi Cola can, they obtained saliva, right, which also match to the pap smear DNA belonging to Teresa Horbach, right? So that's what we've got, right? And that's what we're working with. Millbilly, do you have a comment?
Well, like in Queso, it starts out stating they took 7 items from Teresa Hallbach's residence, but they don't list it. They don't list all 7 items.
Yeah.
And why are the very next items listed in the evidence the phone calls between Jody and Stephen?
Yeah. So really, I mean, my aim of the podcast is to educate. We don't know all the answers, and that's why we invite comments. But if you're going to make a comment, make sure it's not a smart ass one. Make sure you can back it up with some real evidence. And if the state has nothing to hide, hand over all the evidence, the whole lot, holus bolus, to Kathleen Zellner and her experts. And I'll tell you why they don't want to do that. They handed over item FL, the bullet. Well, guess what? Her analysis placed the bullet under a very powerful microscope and did chemical analysis on the bullet, something that the state didn't do, right? So if the bullet had hit skull, it would have left bone shards in the bullet, because her experts did test firings of .22 rounds into bovine bones, the thickness of a skull, right? Every one of those samples only penetrated a small amount into the ballistic gel, which meant that the rifle itself didn't have enough, the bullet itself didn't have enough penetration power to go through a human skull. Therefore, what on earth is item FL doing on a garage floor? Right? If it caused beveling in bone, it meant that the bullet had to have entered the skull. Therefore, what's it doing on the garage floor? Well, Zellner's experts showed that there are no trace chemicals to prove that there's any bone. Furthermore, there were no physical signs of bone shards. But what the expert found was wood and red flecks representing likely paint. Look at the damage that finding made. Ken Kratz then said, oh, well, item FL never hit the skull. It went through her body. So why is it that Ken Kratz can just simply willy-nilly change his story to match the findings? In other words, the state has not proved that item FL ever struck Teresa Hallbach anywhere. Millbilly.
Well, why can't Ken Kratz ever answer a direct question?
Correct.
Ever.
Correct.
Ever.
Correct. So, I say to the guilters, you want to debate forensics? Write down your questions, but you better know your stuff. And if the state has nothing to hide, why did it give back the bones?
Why do you continue to hide things?
Correct. Correct. What has the state got to lose? And the answer is a lot. More than just $36 million here, guys. Big Jeff.
I'd ask the guilters to stand by next to us and join us in asking the state to produce this evidence. Do you really want to live in something? I mean, if that could be your brother in prison, that could be your father, your son, your sister.
Yes.
Why wouldn't you want this evidence out? Why does the state have the ability to hide it from the attorney? It's just unbelievable.
Yeah. If you've got, this is how ridiculous it is. If you've got the gentleman, the professor who built the anti-rapid DNA system, who said, I will test all the bones with my rapid DNA processing system that should obtain a full genomic profile to settle the question once and for all. Whose bones are they? Why did the state turn around and give away all the bones back to the Hallbach family when it could have been settled to determine, are those cremains Teresa Hallbach's or are they somebody else's? Now, if you're a parent, you would want to know whether they belong to your child. And it is insidious and nefarious that the state gave away back biological material to the family, knowing, according to the judge, that they're not human bones. They must be animal bones. Now, how ridiculous are we getting here, guys? Big Jeff.
There's also no evidence that the Hallbachs were asking for these bones back in the first place. The state just did it. They just decided it was time for them to go back, and it's very coincidentally timed.
Correct.
With the rejection of one of Stephen's post-conviction relief prior to Zellner taking the case.
Correct. Miss Sammy, do you have a question?
Yes. Stephen Avery guilty. Brendan Dassey innocent is the name of the person. I believe in Brendan's innocent, and I think he should be out. I think Avery used Brendan for cleanup and an alibi at the fire.
Well, all you need to do is to provide evidence, right? Now, an opinion is not evidence. Speculation is not evidence.
Yeah.
Where is your evidence?
Well, I'm basing everything I learned basically on audio.
Yes.
Because you can't dispute what somebody said.
Yes. Correct.
And Stephen's story is always the same.
Correct.
Actually, the longer we listen to these jail calls, the more he starts to remember.
Yes.
And when he hears about Brendan saying he's seen legs in the fire, he's laughing.
He laughs over Dolores.
This is, are you serious?
Yeah,
Yes.
I was just going to bring that up.
Sorry,
as far
Christy.
as thinking Stephen's guilty and Brendan's innocent and Stephen used Brendan, listen to 120 hours worth of jail phone calls. There's no way. There's absolutely no way. Stephen's not. Just I'm not even going to. Nope.
Okay, Dr. Silkman, there's a question here for you.
Excuse me one second. A bonfire on Halloween is an invitation for people to stop by. Look who passed up on this invitation, right? We know that Barb and Scott Tadich drove in, saw the bonfire, saw Steve and Brendan there. They chose not to walk up there and, chat with them for a while because they had other business to watch Prison Break or whatever they wanted to. But they could have very easily have done. Earl
Yeah,
and Robert Fabian were on the property, and they could have stopped by to look at that bonfire too.
you hear
But
Steven.
they chose. Why in the world would you do it on Halloween?
You hear Steven talking to Scott, and he asked him, "What time would you drop Barb off?" He was like, 7:45, 7:40, so something right there. And he states the fire was pretty much done by then, right? And he agrees with them. We know Stephen Avery's in the house by 9 p.m. or 8:58 because that's when Jody calls.
Correct.
And when
Correct.
Barb makes her statement about Brendan being home at 10:30, she's talking about a different time. The cops take all their statements and mix them up so that they can create a narrative and scenario that never took place.
Yeah. Sam.
Okay. There's a question for you to discuss A23 so our friend can learn that there was a third DNA profile on the RAV4. Please.
Yeah. Well, A23, the reason why we know about A23 was because the attorneys were smart enough to question Culhane, right? And it all came about when I think it was in the pre-trial. There are three trials: the pre-trial, Brendan Dassey trial, and the Stephen Avery trial. The attorney asked about the presence of blood and fingerprints on the outside of the RAV. And I did a presentation on this. And what was found was there were multiple sets of prints on the outside of the RAV4, and there were prints on the inside of the RAV4. None of the prints belonged to Stephen or Brendan. Now, it just so happened that I think it was Stolke or Groffy, one of the two, what they did is they took photographs of the RAV4 and they also looked for physical signs of blood on the vehicle. And I think it was Groffy or Stolke called over Sheree Culhane and said, "You better take a swab of that." That swab happened to be blood, and it was on the outside of the door near the handle where you open up the handle to get inside the RAV4. So they noted fingerprints and blood. Culhane did a testing with phenolphthalein to prove that the smear was in actual fact blood. So they tested it. She tested it first with phenolphthalein to determine whether it was blood, and it was. She then extracted DNA, and this is in her report. She didn't, in the first report where she extracted DNA from A23, she didn't mention the result, right? It was completely bypassed. So think about this. You've got unknown set of fingerprints. You've also got the presence of blood on the outside of the door handle of the RAV4. Well, the attorney questioned Culhane closely about A23. She said, "I developed a partial profile of A23, but didn't say how many loci came up. However, she stated that it excluded Stephen and Brendan. Therefore, we have another DNA profile on the Toyota RAV4 that came from blood, not skin, but from blood, because she proved it by swabbing with phenolphthalein that it was blood. She was able to isolate DNA from that blood. That's A23. But the important thing is this: it excluded Stephen, it excluded Brendan. Therefore, it's likely. Big
Dr.
Jeff.
Silkman, could you please amplify the legal viability of using a partial profile for exculpatory means?
Yeah, look, back then you need 15 loci. So if you're going to include someone or exclude someone, you need 15 loci, right? Now remember that when item BZ, which was charred muscle from bone, only 7 loci came up. The other loci didn't come up because the DNA was badly fragmented. Legally, Culhane could not state whose DNA that came from. That's fair enough. When A23 was developed, only a partial profile was obtained. Therefore, when you look, Culhane had the DNA profile of Stephen and Brendan for 15 loci. Plus, don't forget they had a gender marker XY. So, for Culhane to say it didn't belong to Stephen, it didn't belong to Brendan, it probably meant that the partial profile she obtained was from a male. There was a Y chromosome. Furthermore, the loci that came up, none of them matched Stephen or Brendan. So, because it was a partial
I guess
profile,
if I could interrupt you one more time, because there was a recent Reddit about this that I commented on myself because you've educated. The presence of loci that do not belong to Stephen and Brendan, even if it's partial,
correct,
is legal proof that they are excluded from owning
they're
that
excluded.
blood sample.
They're excluded.
Because people on that Reddit post are saying, well, it was partial. That means you can't use it for anything. And you're saying, with your expert opinion, that is indeed exculpatory if the loci that do show up, even if it's only partial, exclude Stephen and Brendan. That's viable because those loci were found and they don't belong to Stephen and Brendan from their full profile.
Correct. Correct. But Culhane said that. Not me, not Dr. Silkman. Culhane said that. It excluded them. Right? Now, one moment. Think about this. You now have another DNA profile on that RAV4. Now, one would expect that Culhane would go back, re-extract A23, and obtain a full genomic DNA profile, 15 loci, run it through CODIS, the criminal database, or subpoena Scott Tadich, Ryan Hilligus, Scott Blowdorn, any of the males that Teresa Horbach knew, subpoena them, obtain a DNA sample just to exclude them. Guess what? It wasn't done. Now, how ridiculous is this, guys? You've got the crime scene, the Toyota RAV4. You have got fingerprints and blood on the very door handle that you have to open up to put in the victim in the back of the vehicle. Does Cherie Culhane re-extract A23? No. Right? And this was noted by Kathleen Zellner as well. She talked about the importance of CX, which was blood that was found at the quarry where the bones were found. She also commented on A23. Now, come on, guys, whether you're a guilter or a truther, don't you think you want to retest A23? Right? If the state are saying that Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey killed Teresa Horbach, placed her body in the back of the RAV, right? And Stephen Avery was actively bleeding. You've got blood on the door handle. Did that blood belong to Stephen? No. Therefore, who is going to be leaving blood on the door handle, the very door handle that supposedly the victim was put in? Did that blood belong to Teresa Horbach? Well, why didn't Cherie Culhane state it excluded Teresa? She didn't. So at the very least, redo A23, clear it, right? Did it belong to Teresa? Cherie Culhane didn't comment. The only comment she said was it excluded Stephen, obviously couldn't have included Brendan. So the loci that came up excluded them, right? Therefore, you have a third party you've got another genomic profile on that RAV4. Did it belong to law enforcement? We don't know. So, look, guys, excellent question. But really, if you're doing a murder investigation, I'm sorry, but you want to find out who A23 belongs to. Thank you, guys.
Sammy, is there any response from our Gilter friends about whether or not A23 should be retested and whether they're willing to stand next to us and demand the state retest that?
No, he keeps commenting and commenting and commenting about other things, about phone calls and whatnot. I don't think he was even listening.
Just kick him out. Just kick him out until he can answer the question. Just kick him.
Well,
answer a real question. Answer a question or get that. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, Christy.
I just want to address Stephen Avery, guilty guy here. If you really think Stephen's actually masturbating in that phone call, you have problems. He's joking. He's not actually masturbating. That's really it. It's the guilters just take what they want to hear and they run with it.
Yeah.
And that was
but,
just something I happened to catch. He's absolutely not masturbating in that phone call.
Yeah. This is it. This is the typical guilter, the way a guilter actually works. It's called deflection.
Correct.
I'm not going to answer your question because I've got no expertise or knowledge. And I know the guys, they were interviewed by Purpleplex, and they should know better because one of the gentlemen is an actual forensic scientist. And he'll be able to tell you the utter bullshit that the forensic team Culhane did on the forensic DNA analysis, right? Those two guys should know better. If they are scientists, they should criticize Culhane and the state on what they did, not compliment them, right? We're talking about two people sitting in prison that did not commit any murder, right? So your criticisms, I listen to them, but you should put in the effort as well, right? Now, we know about CX. We know about A23. Why haven't they been re-extracted and run through CODIS, right? What's the issue? Miss Piggy.
Just to let you know, Dr. Silkman, the SAG-BDI has said that he wants everything tested as well. And to be honest, at the end of the day, that's what everyone wants. That's what Kathleen wants.
Correct.
So we're all in agreement.
Correct.
We're all in
Ms.
agreement.
Piggy, can you clarify those acronyms for us, please?
The Stephen Avery guilty, Brendan Dassey innocent person that's in chat.
Yeah. Hey, we are here to find the truth. And none of us are going to shirk the issue that if Stephen and Brendan had committed this crime, burn in hell. Right? Please, we're not going to be defending murderers, but we are going to defend people who are innocent, right? We can see the shenanigans that the state has done, right? We understand what Ken Kratz did, the way Ken Kratz trivialized all of Stephen Avery, his past. We have read Ken Kratz's book. You can ask Christy. We know how his mind works. We know what he did, and we know how the court case panned out. Ken Kratz avoided all the tough questions, right? We have done on this podcast the phone calls, the messages, the erasing of messages. Did you have a look at Ken Kratz's face? Did you have a look at Ken Kratz's response when Buting said to him, well, someone has been messing around with her messages. And all that Ken Kratz can say was, oh, Judge, we'll have to look into it if Teresa Halbach was alive on November the 2nd. What type of crap is a senior attorney saying in front of a judge that they didn't do their homework to see if Teresa Halbach was still alive on November the 2nd? You know why? Because it doesn't fit the narrative of Stephen Avery killing her on October the 31st. Millbilly.
Yeah, he actually says, well, if the defense is trying to speculate that Teresa Halbach was still alive, this is first of our knowledge that we'd have to look into this.
But this is over a year and a half later in the trial. Big Jeff.
Yep.
The least you can say is that Kratz treated this as a game to win rather than a legitimate investigation to really uncover the truth. I personally believe it's much more nefarious than that. But even if it's just that, and Kratz was duped by the antics of law enforcement, he should be ashamed of himself.
Yep. Just like Pagel says, all our hard work paid off.
Yeah.
And he speculates that they found blood on the key.
Correct. And before you chime in, BB, that's why a team approach who consists of passionate people who have actually read the material, have got no agenda, and can come together in a podcast to deconstruct the evidence. And we have. But furthermore, Kathleen Zellner and her experts have also deconstructed the state's case. So if the state has nothing to fear, put her in front of a judge. That's all I ask. BB.
Ken Kratz is also a narcissist. Let's start with that for a minute.
Correct.
And collectively, right now on this podcast, you're looking at individually hundreds of hours per person. Hundreds of hours over 4 years that have been put in on this case.
Yes. I mean, I like to put it out there. If I had any hesitation in Stephen Avery's guilt, Brendan Dassey's guilt, I would not be here defending them. I would not be here. Christy, do you have a question? A comment?
I was going to address the guilter again, but I'm just going to let it go because it's not worth it. But BB, only hundreds? I think we're probably...
A soft estimate, okay.
I think collectively we're definitely nearing millions of hours.
Well, I said
of research.
each of us.
Oh, yes. Well, I've done
had put
hundreds
in
just the
hundreds of hours.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the comment I want to make is this: if you take out Brendan Dassey, no one saw Stephen Avery do anything. So this whole case is circumstantial. There's no photograph, there's no video, there's no audio, there's nothing of Stephen Avery killing Teresa Halbach. None. It's all circumstantial.
And remember, when they talk to Jody, they tell her, we know Stephen did this by himself.
Correct.
Why are they going after Brendan then?
Correct. Because with Brendan, they need the narrative to fill in the gaps, right? Now, Jody,
it's quite obvious from the phone call
why they went after Brendan.
Yeah,
they tried to. All they had on him was some bullshit planted evidence and a gun charge. So they were trying to bring up anything else they could charge him with to keep him locked up because he was about to get out.
Correct.
They tried getting Marie to flip. They tried getting Jody to flip. And then they went after his only alibi. And the only reason they knew that because they were monitoring his phone calls.
Correct. Oh, no question.
How many times did Stephen say, if I did it, Brendan had to have done it too, or he had to have seen something?
He says that to Barbara. He says multiple different times that him and Brendan were at the fire, sitting on the golf cart.
Yes.
He talks about burning the brush that Radant brought over. So if Radant wouldn't have been cutting down that brush, he wouldn't have been burning anything.
Yep. Well, guys, I think we've set a record. We've only done 2 slides. But what I like to do, and look, we can't predict how a podcast is going to go. And we invite the questions from guilters. It sharpens us up. But please, you need to look at this case from multiple angles, right? And now we're building up a really good picture from the phone calls that Christy is going over one by one and writing a précis on each one of them. We've got Millbilly who's looking at the law enforcement calls. We now have the photographs of Cuss Road, right? Now, I'm telling you right now, if nothing happened at Cuss
Hey,
Road,
them photos of
why
Cuss
are
Road
they
are a
why are
day
they
late.
suppressing it, Millbilly?
Them photos of Cuss Road are a day late.
Right.
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 My advice to the guilters is this: if you look around and all you see is large intestine, it's time for a different.
Okay. Well, look, guys, we're not going to get much further. We've already done 2 hours. But what I want to do is finish slide 161. I knew we shouldn't have had a look at the RAV, but the remarkable thing is this. The remarkable thing is this. What we have here is an FBI agent who's doing scans of inside the Toyota RAV4. Now, why on earth did they take out all the seats from the Toyota RAV4, and why is the FBI agent doing scans? Well, apparently the laser scans are to look for fingerprints. So they've got it like a mobile laboratory that looks for fingerprints. Unfortunately, they didn't find any of Stephen Avery's fingerprints inside the Toyota RAV4. I don't think they even made a comment whether they found Teresa Hallbach's fingerprints inside the Toyota RAV4. So let's
I
summarize.
think they said one inside the driver's side door somewhere.
Okay. So we have no fingerprints from Stephen Avery. We've got 6 drops of blood and flakes, blood flakes, inside the Toyota RAV4. We can't actually prove that the photographs of the bloodstains are in situ. We don't know when they were taken, right? We've got photographs of the 2 droplets near the ignition, but it's clear that someone with a Q-tip has touched the blood droplet and done a swab. So therefore, if that's the case, they're not in situ pictures. They're post in situ pictures. They've been processed already. Now, if you look at the testimony, the droplet or droplets of blood in the ignition, near the ignition, have been swabbed 3 times. Once by Groffey and twice by Colhane. Both of them have done a presumptive test on that blood stain. Therefore, the picture we see is a processed picture. It doesn't represent what originally was seen. Therefore, what do we trust? What do we trust, guys? BB.
This isn't a trust one, but I still want to know how somebody bleeds blood flakes. Just something further for the guilter to think about.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Millbilly, do you have a comment?
Yeah, exactly. How does somebody bleed flakes?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you've got a blood flake, it's clearly that the blood has dried and crystallized.
Well,
So,
and we have photos from the crime lab where they take pictures of the droplet that's on the rear passenger door. Then we have
yes.
these photos that we recently got, and it's very apparent they didn't collect any of the blood because it's still there.
Yeah.
So why are they
Correct.
just leaving it there?
Well, the interesting thing is that Colhane did not test all of the blood droplets, only a sample of them. Miss Piggy, do you have a comment?
Yeah, if he's like bleeding profusely from a reopened wound, why is there no blood on the gear stick or any other place
Yeah.
on the steering wheel or anywhere
Yeah.
like that? Do you know, it's just unbelievable.
Well, just go look at Stephen Avery's car, and you'll see
Grand
what
Dam.
it's supposed to look like when he's actively bleeding.
Grand Dam, and also his
Yeah.
truck, the black truck, where there are droplets of blood absolutely everywhere. And you see, this is the first sign of suspicion, the RAV4. The crime scene itself, it's too clean. You've got none of his blood on the outside. You've got none of his blood on the steering wheel.
And she worked out of her car. For there not to be any prints of hers in the car,
Yeah.
impossible. And there's also things missing because if there's a dispatch call, the lady calls in stating that Teresa was at her house on the 29th taking pictures. And her son helped Teresa carry her camera bag to the car. So where's her
Right.
camera bag?
Yes. Yeah.
And the lady was also inquiring because she took photos of her family and she never got the photos, and she would like to know if maybe they're in evidence. Because I'm
Yes.
assuming after she took the photos, she probably eventually made it back to the studio. Tom Pierce says she seen her at the studio on that Sunday.
Yes.
So I don't know.
And those electronics burnt. None of them are her good camera. The one in
Correct.
the camera bag.
The large camera. The large camera. Correct. Well, look, guys, I'm conscious of the time. And look, I want to thank the guilters. I want to thank them for their questions, right? And we don't pretend to know all the answers, but that happens to be also you as well. You don't know all the answers either. And that's why we're trying to find the answers. We're not here to promote the innocence of two people that we know are guilty. We don't do that. If that Kathleen Zellner warned Stephen, my scientist will find you guilty if it points that way. So far, he's got a clean sheet, and he has not said no to any further forensic testing, right? He's had no objections to that. And like I said, if the forensic evidence points to Stephen and Brendan, burn in hell, guys. But if the forensic evidence points to either a planting scenario or to someone else, guilters, are you going to change your mind, or are you going to do a Jean Couchet who still believes that Stephen Avery raped Penny Bernstein on a beach when he had 11 freaking witnesses that told the judge and the jury that they were standing next to Stephen? I want to know, guilters, if Kathleen Zellner's experts proves that he never committed this crime, are you going to change your mind? Or are you going to do a Jean Couchet? Thank you, guys. I need to have a coffee. Guys, do we have any final comments?
Being as I'm
Sammy.
on the chat, I want to welcome everybody here. I don't care who you are. If you want to come in here and ask questions and we can have a civil conversation, that's great. Name calling will get you timed out or kicked.
Yes. Yes. Big Jeff.
Living in a free country and wanting this for our brothers, our fathers, our mothers, our sisters, our sons, release the evidence. Do all the testing. Is this a free country or not? Or do we have political prisoners? What?
Yeah. Yep. BB.
Everybody is welcome to meet us over on Discord. And many of us will be in the phone conversations over there.
Beautiful. Christy, do you have a comment?
I second BB. We'll be over there. I welcome the guilters to come.
Yes. Beautiful. Miss Piggy, do you have a comment?
I just want to say thank you for having me on the podcast again. And just everyone, just keep asking questions, keep looking into things, because if someone hadn't have done that a year ago, Kathleen Zellner would never have found out about the bones being given back.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, there's a lot of eyes and ears in this case, and that's the remarkable thing. No one claims to be an expert on everything. We're not.
And the state tried to get Stephen Avery to basically mess up.
Yeah.
When she brought up that, and they're like, well, that's why the state appeals sent everything back so they can include everything she had in one brief.
Yeah, correct.
Including what she had already filed previously.
Yeah,
and that's why they asked for this 3-month extension, because there's a lot there.
Oh God, yeah. Oh, it is very extensive. And look, the reality is, one way or another, the scientists are gonna look at all the evidence again. And I just pray to God that Cherie Cohen has kept A23, because we know the bullet cannot be retested. The key cannot be retested because she utilized all of the DNA, right? So those two items cannot be retested again. So I pray that the forensic evidence has been maintained and that it can be retested. So, guys, this was a fiery episode. I loved it. And thank you very much for all the questions. We've set a new record, BB. We've only done 2 slides. And
I told you we're slowing down every time.
yes, but the remarkable thing is we got more RAV4 pictures next week, which are even more controversial. So, guys, I want to thank the listeners to our podcast. If you've enjoyed what you've listened to, please subscribe. Thumbs up if you've enjoyed our presentation. And look, if you give a thumbs down, we don't mind, but give a reason, right? Give a reason, and we try our best to improve. Guys, I will catch you all next week. Thank you very much, and have a lovely, peaceful week. Thank you, guys.
Everyone enjoy
Bye
your
now.
weekend.
Thank you. Bye.
Merry
Hey,
Christmas.
Merry Christmas to everybody.
A Merry Christmas, of course.
Happy holidays.